Hello everyone and welcome back to this bigger than ever DTM eSports season. We are back for round number 3 and we are ready to go at what is surely going to be a chaotic round. Myself, Elizabeth Glade, Zach Sweeney joins us in the commentary for the first time this season. And Zach, Norisring, this is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be maybe a little bit of carnage as well.
Yeah, potentially so. The circuit map itself, probably the most simplistic of any on the calendar. However, the racing dynamic that we're going to get, far from it, I think. We're going to have a very tight field. There are a couple of cars that are looking quite strong, a couple that are maybe on the back foot as well. The slipstream should hopefully keep everyone nicely in contention. But as we know from the real world counterpart, not everything goes to plan around here.
Indeed, and obviously the season that we've had so far, we obviously have raced in the pre-season round at Spielberg at the Red Bull Ring. We've also raced ourselves at Zandvoort and we raced at Norisring a couple of rounds ago. All three very, very different circuits.
Yeah, exactly that. And to be fair, with Oschersleben and TraxionGG to come after this one as well, I think the diversity of the calendar itself boasts a variety of different challenges that are going to cater both to different cars over the course of the season and different handling dynamics, but equally as well test the mettle of each of the individual drivers as well. It is one that you can't necessarily come in with one individual mindset or one individual driving style and one individual race dynamic. Everything is going to change from round to round. Is qualifying more important at one round? Is the race craft more important at another round? And that changes literally from week on week. So yeah, really, really good stuff in terms of the calendar for this year. And I think Norisring is going to be quite an interesting one to sort of kickstart the halfway point of the online qualifiers.
Certainly so. Obviously that build up towards that season finale. We had a great opening round where strategy played its part in Zandvoort, and a great round obviously a few weeks ago when we were racing at the Norisring. Let's remind ourselves of how it all unfolded. 1 hour racing around one of the most recognisable circuits in Germany. Coming up now, the race start. Tim Yarshall is leading the field. We are green here at the Norisring. And there's Tim Yarshall with a perfect start, covering over Tomas Ribeiro. Max Benneker straight down the inside for Maus, getting aggressive at the opening corner. The big Mercedes around the outside of Ribeiro was trying to hold firm against Benneker, but he sends it straight around the outside. He was on the podium back in Zandvoort. And Benneker makes a mark and up to second position for him here today.
Benneker's got the run though on Yarshall, slipstreaming the Audi, and he's going to look to the inside, is he? Nope. Yarshall covers the inside line, so Benneker's going to look to the outside. Will he try the up and under here? Switches back to the left. Yarshall goes in a little bit deep, and this could work out for Benneker here. He's going to eventually have the inside line by the time we get through to turn 5. Is he in fact going to get the move done before then? He is. He slots in front of Yarshall. Bit of contact, but Benneker through turn 3 takes the lead.
Benneker's just got a drive-through penalty, we believe, for speeding in the pit lane. So, unfortunately for Max Benneker, it's so easy to do. One of the most catastrophic errors, though, that you can make is getting a drive-through for speeding in the pit lane while serving your penalty for driving too quickly in the pit lane. Tim Yarshall then will leave pit lane. He's got Tomas Ribeiro a little bit behind, so a little bit of a faster stop. Where is Moritz Lerner? Right there.
Wow.
Whoa, like a horror film. That was a proper jump scare. It's into the opening corner, and it'll be an easy race lead retake from Moritz Lerner. And even into second position, Tomas Ribeiro.
Adrenaline is coursing through your veins, and that is exactly what's going to be happening between these two right now as we head into the first corner for what could be the final time. And it's defensive line from Lerner. Ribeiro goes outside. He's going to maybe try a switchback here, Lewis, but it looks like Lerner's hung on for the time being.
The final 3.4 kilometre lap around the Norisring, and once again it's incredibly close. It's getting close though because of the defensive line that's being taken here from Moritz Lerner. There is going to be an opportunity down into 6 for Tomas Ribeiro. He's a little bit too far behind, and again too good to the corner. Moritz Lerner, brilliant stuff. Bit of a lock up there for Ribeiro. You can see these two are leaving nothing on the table.
Yeah, Ribeiro getting nice and close behind Lerner. The two big overtaking opportunities are gone, but there's still a few more that it can be done here at the Norisring. Again, though, Ribeiro just over 2 tenths behind. It doesn't sound like much, but in this situation it is a lot. He ducks to the inside, but he's not going to be able to do something there. And one more corner ticked off for Lerner as we head towards the final complex.
Indeed, double hairpin left to go. Moritz Lerner sitting at the front of the field. Didn't take part last season. Ribeiro's throwing it all on the line as they head their way through 10. Through 11 and then out onto the start finish straight again. We welcome Maus back into the DTM ESPORTS Championship and in a big drag race up towards the line. I think Tomas Ribeiro is going to have to settle for second because Moritz Lerner is venturing his way back up to the top spot. It is going to be a big drag race between the pair of them, separated by half a tenth of a second. Moritz Lerner will return to winning ways in the DTM Esports Championship, defeating Ribeiro here at the Norisring. Tim Yarshall will round out the podium behind. Spectacular round there, Zach. And obviously, great to see Moritz Lerner. Definitely a fan favourite here in the Maus team. Great to see them back onto the top step. Tomas Ribeiro, though, he's been showing himself as one of the fastest drivers on the Raceroom platform. And with a 4th place to open the season, with a 2nd place there at the Norisring, he's getting stronger and stronger.
He really is. You know, we've seen him in the Raceroom ranked events as well. He won the Bathurst 2-hour very commandingly. He was also very strong at Macau at the back end of 2025 as well. Tomas Ribeiro, always up there, always in that conversation. And I think that's the magical thing about Raceroom as a platform in the DTM Esports Championship. You know, Maus is a contingent, one of the biggest in sim racing, and Tomas Ribeiro really taking that fight to him as well. A couple of other people obviously in and around the mix, but I think over the course of these online qualifiers, it's not necessarily about, you know, winning every single round. Fair enough, you maybe can make a statement. The ultimate goal is to be inside the top 20. I think Tomas Ribeiro very comfortably is going to be there by the time we finish at the Saxon Ring. Yeah, and obviously, here at the Norisring, Tim Yarshall, he won the opening race last season. Alessandro Ottaviano, already a race winner this season, won the main race, the feature race afterwards here at Norisring. That was when we were running a 2-race format, but obviously we've opened it up. It's now 60 minutes of racing in a single race. Tim Yarshall at the moment, I think he's looking pretty strong in practice. He'll be the firm favourite for the day, I think. But if you don't really know too much about the racing here in the Norisring, well, this is one of the things, the DTM Esports Championship. We keep very close watch on what's happening in the real world as well, as the real world keeps its close eyes on what happens here. And of course, they race around the Norisring all the time. Let's take a look at how it unfolds in real life.
DTM Weekend Round 4 is history. The Norisring delivered. Oh, to the inside!
Come on, Finn. Super job. Keep pushing.
Sold out crowd. Over 118,000 spectators celebrating races 7 and 8 on the legendary street circuit in the heart of Nuremberg. Right in the thick of it was comedian Oliver Poker. Well, I think the atmosphere is pretty good. The great thing about the DTM is that it's more accessible than Formula 1. If you're into motorsports, then you're in good hands here at races like this. It's the best thing to do when Germany isn't playing. He's witnessing history being made in the first race. Nicky Thiem secures the very first victory for Aston Martin.
It is so much fun to go rock and roll on the streets of Nuremberg.
The Dane was already in high spirits on Friday at the traditional gathering in the Motorsport Lounge at Dutzendijk. The entire driver lineup, team bosses and sports celebrities celebrated the kickoff of the racing spectacle here in the run-up to the event in a relaxed atmosphere. Of course, the weekend also had many motorsports fans who got to experience the high-octane spectacle up close. There was also a brief journey through the history of high-speed racing, with exhibition runs by historic DTM race cars from different years.
It's quite special, some memories coming back, the fans really appreciate it, and yeah, it's nice that the cars are still running in circles.
A complete package in the fan zone as well. Great atmosphere everywhere. Here fans could even get their idol's names spray painted directly onto their skin. Anyone who chose Nicky Thiem had twice the reason to cheer, because the Viking was outstanding in race 2 as well. The man of the weekend has jumped to the top of the standings and is now the mid-season champion.
A dream since a kid just to drive in this series, and now to you stand here and say that is just unbelievable.
This brings the first half of the season to a close. The verdict is more than positive.
And all in all, it's a very interesting season. Again, another interesting DTM season, and I hope it will continue up to Hockenheim.
Let's keep it just as spectacular, and it will be. The next stop on the DTM race calendar is Oschersleben, July the 24th to the 26th.
very clear that there are some Norisring specialists in the real world. Nicky Team's had 3 victories in DTM. All 3 have come at the Norisring. So clearly it works for some. Currently the Champions League, they'll be going back racing at the Oschersleben circuit in a bit, where we'll be racing as well later in the season. But obviously, again, you can get the vibe there. Zach, is hugely dramatic, the race they get around there. But obviously the DTM events, they're great. Loads of support series and such, which creates quite the environment with the classics as well.
Yeah, it really does. It's always a spectacle to sort of tune in and watch them. And the racing, to be fair, is fantastic. We saw a glimpse into some of the carnage and chaos that can happen, but I think some of the purest forms of motorsport is in fact DTM. I think of the clip, obviously, the last lap lunge into the Sachs curve at the Hockenheimring like earlier this year, or was it last year? Either one. Nonetheless, the move happened. It was very good. But yeah, and obviously we get an opportunity to emulate that here in the virtual world. I think because the Norisring on paper is very simple-ish. You know, there's not very many opportunities to gain lap time, and as such, the lap times will be very, very close. Just looking at the practice session, the top 10 covered by just over 0.2 of a second. So because everyone is so close, I think that does invite the very argy-bargy-esque racing that we've come to expect around this circuit.
Yeah, and we'll see quite a lot of that throughout the race. We'll see a little bit as well when it comes to lapping traffic. Obviously, there are 2 forced pit stops here in the DTM Esports Championship over the 60-minute race. And in that, you are going to get in and involved with people that you're battling with, but a lap apart because of how long the pit stops are. That's going to be its whole thing that we'll deal with a little bit later on. And also, we're probably expecting that little bit of carnage, which we have seen, again, in the real world around the Norisring. Let's take a look at one of the larger incidents that we've seen around here in the recent past.
Out on the track, Lucas Auer and Arjamani were getting together, and Arjamani with a fairly optimistic move on the inside of Lucas Auer. The race stewards were going to take a look at that, but then a major incident. Max Powell and Kelvin van der Linde getting together into turn 1. It was inevitable we were going to see a red flag. The car of Max Powell jinking firstly to the right, collecting the barrier, and then barreling across into Kelvin van der Linde's BMW. Debris flying everywhere. The safety cells of these cars being tested to the max. Both drivers clearly out of the race. Both cars absolutely destroyed. And the red flag came out to stop the race, to help the drivers to get out of the cars, but also for repairs to the barriers. And it was a lengthy stoppage. The cars being brought back to the grid with 20 minutes remaining on the clock. The barriers were being replaced by the team, and eventually we got back to green flag racing. Nicky Tim carrying on from where he left off.
Obviously dramatic. That's what we kind of expect with here at the Norisring. We're probably going to get something similar, not quite the same here in the sim, but maybe something similar to that here on Race Room, which shouldn't be unexpected around this circuit. Thankfully, though, in the sim, no real risk of danger, and thankfully Van der Linde fine after that one right into the driver's door as well. Very scary incident, wasn't it, Zach?
Yeah, it really was. And thankfully, both of them, okay, I think a testament, obviously, to the standards of safety in the real world, but definitely a glimpse into what the Norisring can provide, and definitely showcasing itself as a driver circuit, right? Little oscillations on the circuit, with it being, obviously, the road and the bumps around the circuit, you know, you catch it wrong, very, very small margin of error. And when you've got a field as tight as this, fair enough, these are some of the best drivers in the world, both on this platform and in the wider environment of sim racing. They are the best in the world. Let's not, you know, forget it. But equally, they are human. They can make mistakes, and especially in a championship as tight and as competitive as DTM Esports, they are going to get their elbows out. And I'm going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a little bit of argy-bargy over the course of the 60 minutes of racing.
Very much so. We are about halfway through the season. In fact, it'll be halfway through once we're done with today, at least of this online season. The calendar beginning at Zandvoort and, of course, running through into the Ring, as we were kind of saying about that. A Red Bull Ring, that was a pre-season, the pre-show round before the show really got underway with Zandvoort. We're here at Norisring, right in the middle of that table. After this, we go to Oschersleben and the Sachsenring before a double-header on-site finale in the middle of August. That is what they're all racing for. They're aiming to be in the top 20 of the championship to get invited to race at the Nuremberg Ring and the Hockenheim Ring. That being done in person. I think it was at the Nuremberg Ring, isn't it? And they'll battle it out for the title and for the prizes. Focusing it on a little bit here, though, Zach. the Norisring, we've spoken about it a few times. So few corners around here, and you can kind of see that opening hairpin, the final hairpin, and that chicane in between. That is basically all they have to master, but that means that thousandths of a second will decide so very much.
Yeah, like we say, the margin for error around here is so slim, right? You've only got 4 opportunities to actually gain lap time, and each of them carry a much more significant part of the overall lap time. And as such, yeah, it just means that qualifying expect to be super tight. It always is in DTM esports, even at some of the longer circuits. However, around here, it is just going to be a case of, can you get your tyres up to temp? Can you put the lap in when it matters? And ultimately, can you deal with the pressure? All of these drivers, after hundreds of laps of practice, because realistically, that's what they've done, they all probably are going to be able to get within the same, 100th of a second on pure raw potential. It's a case of who can arrive today and actually execute that lap time.
Going to be getting close to the barriers, and that's going to be the most important bit, being comfortable with the concrete and the metal that surrounds this circuit, the Armco barriers. We always see, if you flick through social media and you see after DTM's been there, my Instagram feed is always full of it. People getting really close, and sometimes even a little bit too close to the concrete barrier on the exit of that chicane. It's not really a chicane, it's more 2 90-degree corners that are slightly separated, which does mean they're difficult in their own right. Great flow around here. I'm sure it's a circuit you've almost certainly never driven, Zach, but I've done my fair few laps around here, and I've even had a couple of whoppers in my time, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, to be honest. I've not driven the Norisring, but from what I've seen, it does look incredible, and I think the racing that we are going to get pretty good. 2 hairpins either side of the circuit, some late lunges, and again with a lot on the line as well. For those maybe not towards the front, because they're coming into this with more of a consolidation. Let's just make sure we get into the top 20, because that's where they can then make the difference when we head to the Nuremberg ring later on in the year. But for those further down, for those actually fighting to get inside the top 20, it is going to mean a hell of a lot more, and they are going to want to go for those sends. And this is a circuit that invites it, but very easily punishes it as well. I'm sure you've got plenty of stories of some almighty sends that you've done around here. Probably some, I'm sure, that have worked. Maybe a bit more that haven't. I'm going to be honest, knowing you, Lewis.
Yeah, there's a reason I retired from. It was a touring car championship, and I retired from a race. My first retirement in that championship was around here, and yes, it's because I got a little bit too ambitious with the send. Thankfully, these are a lot better drivers than you or I, and they have just got their qualifying session underway. They're on the outlaps now and about ready to fire it around this 2 and a bit kilometre circuit. Any favourites from you, Zach, as to who's going to grab pole position here in the opening? Well, I say the opening race. We've only got one this evening.
Yeah, I think there are a couple that you've obviously got your eye on. I was speaking to Lucas Müller a bit earlier on in the day, and he says that the rear-engined cars and the mid-engine cars as well, the Porsche and the Audi, do look very strong. He did say the BMW, not necessarily a favourite as such. I think because of the 2 traction zones in the form of the hairpin and also the change of direction, mid or rear engine cars are going to be slightly favoured around here. And when we are talking margins that are probably a couple thousandths of a second, that car choice, I think, is going to matter quite a bit when it comes to raw qualifying speed. So definitely look out for a couple of those. What it does mean, I think, is that Maus potentially could struggle this evening.
I mean, I think that'll be fine. I do think Tim Yarshall, I mentioned before, obviously looking at the real life stuff where Nicky Team is arguably a comfortable driver around this circuit, and he's taken 3 victories around here. And here in the sim, we are expecting the kind of same from the likes of Tim Yarshall. Just had a couple of technical issues. We'll be coming to the feed as quick as we can. Can tell you that qualifying, as mentioned before, is underway. First couple of laps coming in. Nicholas Halp and Alessandro Ottaviani, those 2 at the top of the time. Ottaviani, of course, a race winner around here and a race winner already this season, Zach, at the opening round of Zandvoort. Definitely a driver to keep an eye on around this circuit.
Yeah, Ottaviani just generally in the sim racing space is unbelievable. He's been around for years. He knows what he needs to do. He knows how to execute a lap, and he knows how to keep himself calm under pressure. Think back for those that were with us for the Next Gen Cup at the Oschersleben a couple of months ago. With that, he was fighting at the front end of the field with the likes of Moritz Lerner and Lucas Müller. He knows how to keep himself calm under pressure. I think that is one of the most important parts of Alessandro Ottaviani, probably one of the best tools in his arsenal. And again, just to re-emphasize how tight it is going to be in this qualifying session, the top 10, bang on. Well, that's actually now just been tipped as Florian Haase goes into the top 10. Under a 1/10 of a second, 86 thousandths separate Turkka Häkkinen on pole all the way down to Florian Haase in P10. Those are the margins that we're talking about here at the Norisring.
Yeah, a bit of radio coverage for you at the moment. I'll take a deep breath and I'll roll through that top 10 very quickly. Turka Häkkinen at the moment is the one at the top. In fact, it's now Häkkinen from Kunze, needracing.com 1-2, with Hauben, Ottaviani, Groenewold, Benneker, Vanna, then Oliveira, Ribeiro, and Moritz Lerner at the back end of the top 10. Tim Yarshall finds himself in just 11th position, which isn't great. Champion Lucas Müller down in 15th, but these will chop and change so much because Hauben's actually flying around the circuit right now with a couple of purple sectors, and Tim Yarshall's just gone nearly a 10th faster in the first, which, considering how small these sectors are, if you're able to get like a 10th or 2 in those sectors, very, very important. Zach, qualifying around here is going to be so important because track position really is king.
Yeah, especially when we get to the pit stop phase as well, because we've got so many cars in such a small circuit. Fair enough, blue flag rules have been amended for this one, but you don't want to time the traffic wrong and be offset relative to your rivals who are still maybe running in clear air while you're having to dart your way through some of the slower traffic, if you like. And when track position, as we already know, is important, if you get that pit strategy wrong, it is going to have a huge impact. It's not to say that qualifying is the be all and end all, but if you can execute the next 2.5 minutes and really put in a very strong lap, you are looking very, very good for the race win. That being said, 60 minutes, it's not a short amount of time. You still need to be consistent. You still need to bring it. And ultimately as well, that's going to be a lot of pressure on your shoulders as you roll towards turn 1.
2 minutes left to go of the qualifying session. We'll be getting the feed to you as quick as we can. Certainly, we should have it sorted by the time the race starts, so do not panic. But it is Nicholas Hauben still holding firm at the top. 48.878 is the time that he set. Turka Häkkinen's a couple of hundredths behind, so Hauben's found his way back to the front. Julian Kunze back there. Team Nitro, needracing.com sharing a car apiece. The front 2 rows, which is always great to see. And some purple sectors coming in from Tim Yarshall. Alessandro Ottaviani has just stolen away the provisional pole for Vitality.
By a massive 0.03 of a second, by the way, which is never usually very big, but in the case of this qualifying session is insane. Tim Yarshall goes quickest beyond that as well, just 23 thousandths clear of Alessandro Ottaviani. So currently Tim Yarshall on provisional pole with Ottaviani alongside him. Hauben and Häkkinen, though, still there, 3rd and 4th. Groenewold, Kunze, Benneker, Vanna, Ribeiro, and Lerner there inside the top 10. A couple of big shakeups though, and as we already noted, Lucas Müller down in P13. Definitely not at all what I would expect, and he's got a minute, so 2 laps if he crosses the line now to make that difference in this qualifying session.
Absolutely. 27 cars on the field as well, and the entire field is separated by about 2/3 of a second, which again shows how incredibly close it is. Tim Yarshall provisionally to the pole time. Expect there is going to be some improvements, but that 48.825 is going to be a very tough one to beat for those behind. Groenewold is improving in 5th position, but it is pretty tight up there. A couple of drivers going for a little bit of a cool down lap here. They've got 35 seconds left to go of the qualifying session, so those final laps will be coming in just a moment's time, and we'll really get an understanding as to what the grid is going to look like. Although, from what I'm seeing here, Zach, few of these drivers, Tim Yarshall, Alessandro Ottaviani, Nicholas Hauben, the top 3, they've returned to pit lane. They're not going to get out again. Turka Häkkinen's just returned to pit lane from 4th. So it seems as though those final times are coming in, and there aren't really any major improvements. Seems as though Tim Yarshall, the firm favourite for this round, has taken the provisional pole.
Gets to a point where you can only improve so far, especially at a circuit like this. You effectively reach not the perfect lap, but as close to optimal as you're going to get. I think that's what we saw from Tim Yarshall. And yeah, he'll lead this one from pole position alongside Alessandro Ottaviani. An important qualifying session, I think, for Tim Yarshall off the back of the podium as well at Lausitzring. He'll be looking to go back-to-back with that here at the Norisring, I'm sure.
Yeah, obviously, apologies for not showing you that qualifying session, but Tim Yarshall did put the lap together to grab pole position for Falcon Sim Racing. They're just in warm-up now. Warm-up's about 5 minutes long, so hopefully we'll have enough time to get ourselves sorted and can see the race start, which I'm sure, Zach, will be pretty dramatic. It's a relatively long run into the opening corner. Obviously, not ridiculously long, but from a rolling start, you'd build up quite a lot of speed into an extremely tight hairpin.
Yeah, and we've seen it in real life, we've seen it in the virtual world as well. Sim racers, they are going to take that margin, aren't they? They are going to send it. This is a perfect opportunity to gain some serious ground. If you're on the back foot in qualifying, if you can just get a good start, get a good jump, stick your nose in, maybe go for a slightly risky move and it pays off, you could put yourself in a much, much better position. Give yourself control over the rest of the race. And I think, that is going to be the aim for these drivers. A couple of them maybe are going to look at this and go, look, I'm in a good position here. Let's not risk it. Let's not ruin it. But maybe some of them, Moritz Lerner down in P10, Kaiki Oliveira, for example, down in P11 as well, might look at this and say, look, we're in the thick of it in the pack here. Let's try and at the very least go for a bit of a gap, maybe go for an outside line into T1 or stick it tight all the way as well, just to try something different, find a gap and hopefully sort of, I guess, Moses their way through the field, right? Hopefully that the carnage allows them to open up a gap and find a way through in a position they're in off the back of not a poor qualifying, but, a subpar qualifying by their standards. They are going to want to make the most of the opportunities that they've been given. And for us, that opens the door for some carnage and chaos.
Well, let's talk about strategy. Zach, you're the newbie in the comms. No, I'm joking. Obviously, I'm not going to let you talk us through it. I'll explain how the rules of engagement work around it, because I think it's going to be a very big deal when it comes to today's racing. 60-minute race. They have 2 pit stops they have to make. Those pit stops have to be 4 tyres as well, as a little bit of fuel. But also, the important thing to note that one of them has to be done in a mandatory window, which I think it opens up after 15 minutes of racing, closes with 15 minutes left to go. As long as you make a pit stop, or your first pit stop must be made during that window. Your second pit stop can be made at any point after that, as long as it's not on the final lap of the race, as in when you end the race. No one's doing a Michael Schumacher in Silverstone. It has to be done on an actual racing lap where you actually have to come out of the pit lane as well. So that's how that kind of works. The interesting thing, of course, some drivers may choose to take the first of their pit stops as soon as that pit window opens. And very rarely, but sometimes we've seen it a little bit this season where drivers have taken those pit stops not on back-to-back laps, but pretty close to each other to kind of get them both done. I think the timing of your pit stops around here is going to be absolutely critical, because 27 cars around here, you have such little room to breathe around here. You're guaranteed to come across some traffic, which, new for this round, they don't technically have to get out of the way as long as you're normally battling with them.
Yeah, exactly, because you lose just shy of just over a lap in terms of your pit stop, and you don't really want to be conceding to a driver that you're racing by the time they come into the pit lane. You do want to hold them up a little bit. I wonder if we are going to see some people, like you say, coming in bang on as soon as the pit window opens, maybe to act as a little bit of a blockade potentially to those around them, or sort of influence their driving, right? To put them back into the pack or encourage some moves when they've already ticked off their mandatory stop. That could be something that the drivers think about. I'm not sure if the rule in its entirety. If they're 1 lap down, we obviously know the blue flags. I don't know if it changes if they go 2 laps down and do their pit stop in consecutive laps, but that also could be quite interesting. If you do both your pit stops back to back, still somehow come out in front of your rival and then hold them up. I think that could be quite a cheeky tactic around a circuit that I think is going to be so unique in terms of the pit strategy. That is a huge hypothetical, and probably might not even be practically possible. But if it is something that they can pull off, I'm sure the drivers are going to try. They'd have done extensive testing, and I'm sure we're going into this with a very calm idea of what they're going to be trying to do over the course of the 60 minutes.
About 50 seconds before we move over into the race session. Just to give you an update as to what the wording was specifically of that blue flag. It was due to the special layout. Blue flags received during the pit stop cycle may be ignored. If you exit the pits laps behind the cars you were directly racing with before the pit stops, any blue flags shown between those cars do not need to be followed. That specifically states about cars that you are racing before the pit stop. So if you are in 27th position and then the leaders come round to get you, to lap you, you're not normally racing with them. So I think in that case, the blue flags technically stand. It's only for those that are actually you are in direct battling with in a normal scenario. So hopefully it's a scenario that we won't see play out with too much drama, but I can guarantee you with 27 cars, I've dealt with my fair share of blue flags, both sides of them. Regardless of whether you like them or not, they will be incredibly frustrating, at least for someone, throughout the running of the 60 minutes here in Norisring.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm interested what the cutoff is. What is deemed as battling? How close are you? If you're in P5 in a 5-car train, is that deemed as battling? It's a headache that the stewards are going to have to figure out, and thankfully not us. But I am interested to see how the drivers are going to play that, because we know sim racers, and they are going to play on that, and they are going to tug on those strings.
Yep. We'll see what the update will be from race control, probably after the fact and before we go racing at Oschersleben in a little while's time. Of course, that round will follow this one up on the next week, on the 18th of July. And I'm very sorry to say, but I do think you might have me on the broadcast. If you're not a fan, well, just watch it on mute, I'm not going to lie. Still stay for the great racing, because we do get some brilliant racing here in the DTM Esports Championship. Unfortunately, I think the race is about to get underway, and the technical issues still holding us up, so we'll do our best to give you at least a moderate level of radio coverage based on our live timing. Tim Yarshall will be our race leader into the opening corner. We'll see if he can maybe reignite his championship challenge. A little bit off. He's got Alessandro Ottaviani, race winner from Zandvoort, alongside Nicholas Halpen, Turkka Häkkinen, who won the pre-show round on the rows directly behind them. Zach, I think we're going to see quite a lot of moves, at least in our timing tower, very early.
Yeah, I think so. We're going to make some good moves. I think they have got themselves underway. So Tim Yarshall will lead them towards the opening corner. Let's see what happens as they make their way through, and how big of a shake-up there is at the end of lap 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we don't have a video of the race, even for me and Zach. So we will see if it all chops and changes and what the gaps end up being. I think they're probably coming around the final corner now, and they're about ready to begin. It's a 60-minute race, so they will be playing it a little bit longer, and maybe a little bit more patient. Not quite as much as they would do if it was a 24-hour endurance race, even though that still causes its fair share of problems into the opening corner. First sector's been completed, and it is Tim Yarshall leading by a quarter of a second. The top 10 at the moment is Yarshall, Ottaviani, Halben, then Häkkinen and Gronewold 4th and 5th, with Kunze, Benneker, Wanner, Ribeiro and Lerner. There was a switch between Häkkinen and Gronewold, so the pair of those battling in that middle sector. But for Tim Yarshall, it does seem as though it's been a solid start. He does have a bit of pressure, though, from Alessandro Ottaviani, at least from what we're seeing on the timing.
Yeah, I think Ottaviani is going to want to establish control of this race, especially in one that is so key in terms of the strategy. He wants to get in front. He wants to lead this race on his own terms and not on Tim Yarshall's. So if he does see an opportunity that's fairly low risk, even one that's maybe more medium risk, I think we are going to see Alessandro Ottaviani go for that. We'll see it change on the timing tower at the very least. They'll make their way into the final corner. That being said, I have seen a couple of chops and changes with Nicholas Halben getting involved in the fight for second. So Tim Yarshall, I think, will lead the opening lap. But Alessandro Ottaviani, Nicholas Halben, both of them hot on his heels, and I think, like I say, very eager to go for those moves if the opportunity arises. Yarshall, very keen not to let them through and to still lead this race through the early phase of this one.
If you fancy a challenge, you can try and sync us up with the German commentary, which is going at the moment. They've actually just worked their way onto the. They've delayed the race start. That's why it took them a lap to do it. That's why the gaps look all so close, because they've not actually started racing yet. That's hilarious, isn't it? At the moment, we are about to see the race over there. We're about 30 seconds. At the moment, our race time is 57.50. Is what there's left. If you want to pause and try and sort it out amongst yourselves, hopefully we'll be able to get the coverage to us fairly soon. But Tim Yarshall did, at least from my view, Zach, he got a great start to that race. Alessandro Ottaviani, a pretty solid one behind. There was, as what I've just seen, a pretty big crash in the opening corner. Zach, that's got my eyes going. I don't know who it was. I think it might have been Max Benneker, maybe.
Potentially, I'm just having a look. I think Tobias Gronewold was the first car that initially went round, as I think we have got some feed that potentially we could throw to in just a moment. But I think it was Gronewold that potentially was the catalyst to the incident. And, well, what did we expect on the opening lap?
Here we go. So we are into the live coverage here. Thank you for bearing with us this afternoon, but it is 57 minutes left to go of racing. Tim Yarshall is your race leader. Turkka Häkkinen behind. Alessandro Ottaviani is keeping close. Jonas Wanner had a little bit of a tap in the background, but we can see, looking backwards from Turkka Häkkinen, the NeedRacing.com driver, how close things are at the front. You were quite right. A couple of drivers dropping back, but to be fair, nothing too major. Just Tobias Gronewold down 22 positions, along with Enzo Filippo down 11.
Yeah, not ideal in the slightest for the pair of them. Gronewold, definitely one of the favourites, maybe coming into this race. Filippo as well. We've seen him in the ranked events, an incredibly strong driver overall. Ottaviani has dropped though to P3 and now behind Turkka Häkkinen, who has had a monster start. Look as well for the likes of Jonas Wanner up 4, Florian Haase up 6, and Nikodem Wisniewski also up 5. So some big gainers making their way through the opening chaos, and that is a skill in of itself. Side by side though, I think that is going to be the likes of Moritz Lerner under a bit of pressure towards the opening corner. The Mals Esports BMW on the inside of turn number 1 will still run side by side with the Mercedes of Tomas Ribeiro towards the chicane.
Look at how good that battling is off of the hairpin. The battle will bring the Mercedes of Ribeiro to the inside, side by side between the pair of them as they go through the S section out towards the wall. So close for the Merc into the barrier. Moritz Lerner is also there. Nikodem Wisniewski and Tomasz Ribeiro are also battling behind, but it does seem as though Tim Yarshall remains your race leader. There is Moritz Lerner down the inside of Ribeiro. Wisniewski also into the mix, dragging in Philip Drace, of course, who's had fantastic pace, especially formed towards the end of last season, if memory serves.
Yeah, and to be expected, really, overall, from a driver that is so experienced for needracing.com in the world of race stream, but Moritz Lerner having to park the bus here. I wonder how much of this is to try and assist his teammate, or whether or not he is just struggling a little bit for pace. We did say the BMW may be on the slight back foot coming into this one, although I'm not 100% convinced on that, considering they're 2nd, 4th and 5th. They've got 3 cars inside the top 5, so clearly something going well for BMW. At the moment, though, in the early phase of this race, Moritz Lerner under a heap of pressure from some very solid drivers, Wisniewski, Ribeiro and Dries, with Kaiki Oliveira not a million miles away at the back end of that train as well. We're only 5 minutes into this race, and we've already had so much drama and chaos, let alone when we throw into pit strategy into the mix as well.
Don't panic if you aren't getting any game audio, any of the cars whizzing their way past. We're trying to fix those issues, but thankfully we do at least have a feed for you to see. So we're sorting out those problems as quick as we can, but Tim Yarshall is holding firm at the front. The top 5 separated by 1 second. Yarshall, Hakkinen, Ottaviani, Wanner and Benneker. Obviously, last round's winner, Moritz Lerner, sits in 9th position. Opening round winner, Alessandro Ottaviani, sits in between that. And, of course, the winner at the pre-show round, Turkka Hakkinen, also up there as well. 3 different winners from the opening, technically 3 rounds of this season. And with 54 minutes to go, still a lot of time for it to be opened up one way or the other. Kaiki Oliveira was looking down the inside of Philip Drace there, heading into the final corner. And he certainly gave it a good go to try and get past the Porsche ahead of him. But the BS competition, BMW, will remain his way in 13th as we focus on Doutsenberg, who has his own mirrors being filled by Philipp Spiegel.
Yeah, look to the inside for the BMW. He is going to have the leg up. It's a long start-finish straight, though, before you're heavy onto the anchors into turn number 1. Inside opens up, so Doutsenberg is going to allow it. Straightens up the wheels slightly at the apex. Tries to go the long way round. Of course, the rear-engine Porsche, definitely stronger on traction, but not enough to keep Spiegel at bay. Of course, you've got the likes of Marco Pech and Kaiki Oliveira, obviously, just in front of that. Pech just in behind as well in this fight for 14th. And, yeah, Spiegel, I probably actually think doing the clever thing there, which was not putting up too big of a battle. They can see the likes of Oliveira and Dries in front of them, and they want to get involved in that battle. They don't want to park the bus too early in this race, with plenty of opportunities still to go. Ottaviani, though, from just in behind Hakkinen with Tim Yarshall, I have to say, commanding this race very, very nicely indeed. However, Hakkinen, after a storming start, will probably be eyeing up in the very near future. Ottaviani, though, his mirrors filled up by Jonas Wanner towards turn 1.
The fastest lap coming in from Jonas Wanner in 4th position, and with Ottaviani ahead of him for Vitality, with Hakkinen ahead for needracing.com. Tim Yarshall, sort of a sister team, obviously all run by the Dur Esports outfit. Tim Yarshall for Falcon Sim Racing is your race leader at the moment. We look from this low-down shot of Max Benneker, and you see the undulations. This final corner I've always found was not necessarily more difficult than it seems. In fact, it's easier than it actually seems. In the sense of a couple of different lines. If you don't get it towards that barrier, it doesn't matter too much because you carry more speed off of the apex anyway. But Benneker's not quite got the speed of the quartet at the moment that lead. Here comes the battle for 3rd position. Jonas Wanner to the inside, and he'll send the Alpha 1 by SX car up into 3rd position. Alessandro Ottaviani down to 4th.
Yeah, not what I expected, to be honest, from Ottaviani in the early phase. Really expected him to be moving forwards rather than dropping backwards and really starting to challenge Tim Yarshall. Not the case in the slightest. BMW, as a manufacturer, move themselves up to 2nd and 3rd. So not really sure what Müller was talking about in them being a slightly slower car. They're definitely not showing it in the slightest. Tim Yarshall, though, still leading, just under 0.4 of a second clear of Turkka Hakkinen into the final corner. Grab your late apex, put your foot down, and you can see already the scrapes on the outside there as they make their way onto the start-finish straight. 51.5 minutes still to go in this race, plus the 2 mandatory pit stops. Cannot wait to see what that does in terms of shaking up this dynamic. Jonas Wanner, though, just outside of the slipstream range, I would say. So Turkka Hakkinen, if he wants it, is free to fight Tim Yarshall for the race lead. Bit further back, though, into the pack, and you can see this absolute melee that is behind Tim Roche. Here comes Marco Pech to the outside of the opening corner.
champion Lucas Muller also closing. He's got a car on his inside and his outside as Marco Page tried to get to the outside of the Alpha 1 car of Tim Rush. And like I say, Lucas Muller keeping Manuel Vera, who returns to Split 1 action. This is the biggest season of the DTM Esports Championship that we've had in the DTM Esports' history, not in terms just of race length, obviously being 60-minute races rather than 2 sprints, but also in terms of the amount of participants. So changes to how it works, no pre-qualifier to work your way into this. It all comes from your ranking, your rating from taking part in the online ranked multiplayer here on Racestream. And with that, it means that we've got multiple splits in action. Manuel Vera, Marco Page, they've both taken part in split 2s at various points in the opening couple of rounds of the season. Manuel Vera took part in it in the previous rounds in the last ring. I think he's raised his rating just that little bit more so he can find his way back up into top split. But I think he's quite close to the cusp of dropping down if he doesn't get a solid result. Obviously, they do get ratings from this as well. And it's always one of those bits I like it. It keeps it open as part of the community. Philip Spiegel, by the way, and Kaki Oliveira, 13th and 14th position, very close and battling hard for 13th position. Unlucky for some, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. So they are on the back, though, of Philip Joyce, and they have got an opportunity to go forward. You can tell it's Philip Joyce's car because he's got his name down the side of the door. Always very, very handy indeed. Spiegel sandwiched between the Porsche in front and the BMW behind. Oliveira might be eyeing up a little bit of a move and wanting to move his way forward. Currently sits what is P2 in the championship, by the way, purely by virtue of just raw consistency. A P10 and a P5 in the opening 2 rounds. Outside of the top 10 at the moment for the Brazilian, and that's going to be the last place that he wants to see. Maybe confident in his pit strategy, but right now that poor qualifying performance hampering his momentum because track position, as we know, is so important. We've seen a lot of overtakes already in the opening phase, but not many of them being largely consequential, especially in this mid-pack.
Yeah, like no one's been able to work their way through 6, 7 positions and make the progress at the moment and find their way into solid stead, or at least if they've done it on the opening lap. They've not been able to do it the laps afterwards. They've not been able to get it and to work their way through on a consistent basis. It's very difficult. Max Benecke is dragging his way back into a little bit of contention here for the final step on the podium, but obviously with only 10 minutes done in the race, still a lot of time to deal with. We're approaching the opening pit stops. It's Lewis McGlade, Zach Sweeney in the commentary booth. Ignore that at the bottom. We are the commentators, at least here on the English stream. We'll be talking about Tim Yarshall, Turk Hakkinen and Jonas Wanner at the moment. The breakaway group being Hakkinen and Yarshall at the front.
Yeah, and I think to be fair, I mean, as much as Turk Hakkinen probably wants to fight for the win, he's not overly interested in getting argy-bargy with Tim Yarshall. It's a lot of risk for not very much reward. Fair enough, maybe you could argue that he is then in control of the race, can decide, dictate the pace a little bit more potentially, but equally that risk, that reward comes at a very high risk, and that comes at the likes of Jonas Wanner, Ottaviani and Benecke all getting their way back into contention, and that is the last thing they want. They want to delay that battle for as long as they possibly can. That being said, Jonas Wanner, I think, is looking fairly quick, but as long as Yarshall and Hakkinen keep doing what they're doing, that gap is going to stay an arm's length away. Marco Page up into P15 ahead of Tim Roche, with Lucas Muller down in P17. Goodness me. Yeah, not at all what you'd expect, of course, from the reigning champion, and to be fair, overall this season so far, P8 back at the Lausitz-Ring, and that's his best result of the season thus far. He has not been looking overly good. But again, it's all about being inside the top 20, and who knows what happens when we go to land for the Nuremberg and the Hockenheim for the actual finals. Maybe he could turn a new leaf there, but at least on the online qualifiers, Lucas Muller absolutely struggling.
Yeah, which considering last season, he won the championship. His lowest finish was 6th, as Max Benecke looks to the outside of Alessandro Ottaviani. Not going to do it there. Can't get his way past the Porsche, but he's looming large in the mirrors after setting the fastest lap. Once again, looks one way and then back the other. Back to the outside of the right hand of the first part of this double 90-degree turn, part of the middle of the circuit, the chicane, which sees Alessandro Ottaviani sitting in 4th position. As I was saying, Lucas Muller, he was the king of consistency last season. It was the reason he won the championship. You could argue the fastest drivers were actually the 3 that finished behind him on the points. It was Isaac Price, Tim Yarshall and Florian Haase, the trio that finished behind. Through quite a lot of the season, they were faster. Florian Haase finished the season with 6 consecutive podiums. Tim Yarshall had 5 victories. Isaac Price had the most podiums of all of them across the season. Lucas Muller had 4 podiums, 2 of which were victories. But the fact that he didn't drop many points from penalties, the fact that he didn't drop many points from races and stuff, meant that he won the championship. And it's not quite clicked for him so far this season, but like you say, once it gets to land, it's a very different prospect for the drivers to deal with. 14 minutes left to go. We're approaching that pit sequence, and with the gaps opening up here, I'm not going to lie, Zach. If I was the hand, if I was Tim Yarsh, if I was Turka Hakkinen, Jonas Wanner, Alessandro Ottaviani, if I've got some clean air ahead of me, as long as no one pits and then comes out directly ahead, I'm staying out.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you want to give yourself as many options in the race as you possibly can. Right now, maybe if you pit, you might be able to time it just right to come out in a bit of clear air, because the entire field is now just spreading the entire length of the pit straight. So maybe you'd be lucky and get some clear air, but I don't really see much reason to come in at this stage. I think what we are potentially going to see is drivers maybe coming in together. Maybe we could see Yarshall and Hakkinen reacting to each other on the same lap just to avoid any gaming as such. At least then they're both, with the detriment of having to take that pit stop and being a lap behind, they then maybe won't focus too much on battling each other, potentially. Again, only time will tell in terms of the answer to that one. But yeah, at least for the moment, I'm not going to expect we're going to see many people in. It is just all about timing and where you then end up after your pit stop. That is going to be the main thing. Moritz Lerner, though, gambling potentially.
Haas is in. Haas is the one that was gambling. Florian Haase has come down onto pit lane. So we have had one of the drivers gambling as the pit window opens. Again, to remind you, it's a mandatory pit stop for the drivers. 2 mandatory pit stops across a day, across this race. The first of which has to be done in the middle half an hour of the race. So once 50 minutes has been complete, which it has been, fantastic. And before the final 50 minutes of the race, you have to make your pit stop in there. And then after which, you have to make one more mandatory pit stop, which can be done at any point. You can leave it to the final 10 minutes, final 5 minutes, however you want. 4 drivers taking the risk: Lucas Müller, Florian Haase, Mate Mikiewicz, and Niels Dalsenberg.
Yeah, interestingly from Florian Haase there, because he was running inside the top 10, the only one to have done so. Müller, Mikiewicz and Dalsenberg I can kind of understand in that vein, because like we were talking about, they've got a little bit more to lose as such. But yeah, for Lucas Müller, a no-brainer, I don't think, coming in this early. Try and get some clear air, try and press on, and hopefully those in front of you will trip over each other. So I think that is a calculated risk from the likes of Müller, potentially also Mate Mikiewicz as well. For Florian Haase, though, he is going to have to crack on with this, because he has got a lot to lose running in what was a very respectable, I think it was P8 by the time he came in. So yeah, he's got a lot more to lose in this race. Hopefully it'll pay out for him, and interesting to see how the rest of the field now are going to react as a result to the first 4 coming in.
Like I say, if I'm one of this top group, I am not pitting until someone is ahead of me. And looking at it from Tim Yarsh's point of view, as you can see in the background, Max Benneker comes into the pit lane. The reason I say that is that when you consider where, which you can see on the track map there, where Dalsenberg and Muller and Haas have come out. Yes, they've come out in a little bit of clean air, but they're not that far away from the next group of cars directly ahead of them. Sebastian Ray, Martin Peterman, Patrick Chari. They're not that far away from them. Whereas from Tim Yarsh's point of view, he is pretty much guaranteed clean air. Turka Hakkinen, if he comes into the pit lane early, yes, he might jump Tim Yarshall. Is the risk really worth it at this point? When the clean air is ahead of you, just get the move done on circuit and then try and use that clean air. All I'm seeing is that if you come into the pit lane, it is high risk. Whereas if you stay out, you're staying in nice clean air, and that's what you want to be doing.
Yeah, the continuity is the main thing there, right? Just, it's working now, keep doing what you're doing. I think you are right in that sense. But equally for Lucas Müller, he could take his second stop. He could use this little bit of free air to do his first one. And then when he catches back up to the train, take your second one and do it again. And then hopefully by that point, the rest of the field have come in. Maximilian Benneker, though, hasn't timed this very well in the slightest. He's dropped down to P20, crucially in front of Florian Haase, but right at the back end of the train. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him take another one straight away.
I mean, yeah, maybe that's the call, to get both the pit stops done immediately. I'm sure the tyre wear towards the end of the race won't be too much fun, but look at this. He's got Patrick Chari, he's got Sebastian Ray ahead, and you can't tell me that these are going to be running the same speed as Alessandro Ottaviani. Yeah, sure, they're going to be a couple of tenths slower a lap max, right? But the point is they're going to be a little bit slower, and that just isn't going to help at all. Unless they magically work their way into pit lane. Obviously, we're not seeing Max Benneker work his way onto pit lane. Sorry, he actually come out behind, like I said, Moritz Lerner and Thomas Ribeiro that we're seeing here. But again, it's just, I get it, but now you're having to work your way through cars that were behind you anyway. And as much as they've got to make their pit stop and then they'll be behind you, it just doesn't add up in my small pea brain.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason these guys are professionals, right? And we're not. But I think they're doing it for a reason. Tim Rush comes in, but I think we are, you are right in that sense. You don't want to make the same overtake twice. It's the same way that, if you're a prototype catching a GT3, you're going to do your stop before you catch the best part of the GT3 traffic. You're not going to go through it and then pit again and then go through it again, are you? Yeah. So I think that's maybe kind of what we're seeing here from Max Benneker. I think Tim Yarshall and Turka Hakkinen, both of them have played the early phase of this race unbelievably well, by the way, because they've not fought each other. They've locked in. They've given each other a little bit of a bump draft. They've gotten clear of Jonas Vanner, and now they basically get to decide when they come in. The pit stop range is so wide, they can basically just do it when they like. And I think what they're doing is waiting for the dust to settle before they make any rash decisions. Tim Rush comes out right into the thick of it in the mid-pack.
Yeah, Lucas Muller directly ahead of him. Now he's gone deep on the brakes, opened up the Porsche on the inside. There's been a bit of contact and a spin there. That would be Lucas Muller, who's been involved in that. I think that might have been with Shaba Hagedis. He's dropped down now to 15th position. Lucas Muller definitely was tight on the inside and was definitely caught up in it. So very, very awkward indeed. I think Lerner and Ribeiro have worked their way onto pit lane. Certainly they were battling with Julian Kunze for 7th position. Sorry, it was Nikodem Wisniewski who's dropped down ahead of all, and that makes way more sense. Wisniewski has found his way onto pit lane, but I completely agree with you. I think Yarshall and Hakkinen are playing the cards perfectly. I get the feeling this might become a 2-horse race, maybe a 3 if Jonas Vanner can drag his way back into it. I just don't. My gut feeling, which again could indeed be wrong, my gut feeling is that those that have pitted already are backing themselves into a not very nice corner, and I don't see that being the winning strategy. Could be wrong, but I might be the bearer of bad news on that one.
I'm going to love it if it is the other way around, though, and we are just completely waffling on about nothing. I think it would. I think it would make for a good race. We're secure enough in that sense. Nicholas Halben, though, versus Alessandro Ottaviani over his shoulder, side by side in towards turn number 1, the German. Doing a bit of battle with the Italian who goes to the outside. Halben, of course, with the inside line will control the apex, get the power down, and Ottaviani not really doing much in that sense. The fact that they haven't pit yet and they're fighting this hard for track position, I don't know, not the wisest to me, to be honest.
I mean, it is what it is. I actually saw Moritz Lerner, who's just come into the pit lane, posted a video about some of his racing elsewhere in sim racing, and it was him against his teammate Yuri Kasdorp, and they were doing a casual race, and Yuri Kasdorp was not getting particularly happy. They were fighting over second position, fighting very hard over second position, and Kasdorp was not very happy about it with his teammate, and they both made a bit of contact, and they had a chat about it afterwards. And it was really interesting because Moritz Lerner quite rightly put out that these are two drivers that are looking for different things. Yuri Kasdorp wanted to win the race and saw that because they were battling really hard, they were allowing the race leader to run away, and Moritz Lerner just wanted to have a good race, right? And that's sometimes what I see from this, is I'm seeing drivers battling really, really hard. And all I'm thinking is, like, surely if you don't battle that hard now, around the pit stop sequence where this is where you make up the time and you can make up a few freebies by just not battling and just driving good laps. When you're battling, you're dragging yourself back into the clutches of other drivers, maybe costing yourself positions or not allowing yourself the opportunity to gain those few positions which you may have done otherwise. Obviously, everyone's approach is different, everyone's aggression level is different, and everyone's patience level is indeed different. But refocusing on where we're at the moment, the patience level of Max Benneker wasn't high, but he is the leader of those that have been to the pit lane thus far. So at least there is that, as Florian Haase has Tomas Ribeiro to worry about, who's straight down the inside of the opening corner. And interestingly, not fought that hard from the German of Florian Haase, who will accept 17th position and sit behind the Mercedes.
Yeah, Tomas Ribeiro, if he's going to go through, he's going to go through. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about in terms of what do you want out of the race. Florian Haase, I think, thinking long game in this case and just saying, okay, I'm happy to latch onto the rear end of the Mercedes in front. Interested to see as to when our top 2 are going to come in. In fact, the entirety of the top 13 are going to come in. On the topic of Max Benneker, though, I think over the last year or so, particularly when he's moved more into the streaming and content creation, has actually calmed down a little bit. He's a lot more patient, a lot more reserved, definitely thinks about his racecraft a little bit more, and also as well, isn't scared to try something different in terms of the strategy. He doesn't always stick to the meta. Right now, he's the quickest and the highest placed of those that have already come into the pit lane. I'd say keep an eye on Maximilian Benneker. He's one of the best in sim racing, has been one of the best in sim racing for many, many years. And I think he could well be onto something here. He wouldn't be on this strategy if it meant nothing.
Look, they're all well further practiced than you or I. So they know they had a game plan coming into this evening, and at the moment for Yarshall and Hakkinen, with the halfway point of the race looming directly ahead of them, they'll be very comfortable with their strategy. Hakkinen, you can see he's closing up here. Now, he's not going to go for anything. See how early he lifted. It was even before the kink, was lifting out of it. I'm not saying if Hakkinen wanted to take over the race lead, he could, but if Hakkinen wanted to take over the race lead, he could. Or at least give it a go, right? I think he is very happy running, keeping his tyres in the right window, fuel saving a little bit. It's not really going to help that much, don't worry, but still, it's something to think about. But letting Tim Yarshall, a driver who has won around this circuit and these streets of the Norisring, and just let him run his pace at the front in the R8 and sit behind relatively comfortably. Because at an absolute worst here for Turkka Hakkinen, right? This race is likely from this spot to turn into a podium. An absolute worst. So just keep going. He's going to get a great option to become a race winner, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he could very easily, I think, go for the win, but P2, solid points. The other thing we need to keep an eye on as well are the penalty points. Turkka Hakkinen has already racked up 35 of them over the course of the season. He currently sits P14 in the standings. And when you're talking about sort of consolidation and just management of the course of the season, Turkka Hakkinen, he could risk and carry a lot more risk for not very much reward. Or he could say, look, I'm in a very, very good position here. I am a driver that will very likely show up at LAN and deliver my best. I'm quite content with sitting in P2. If he does get an opportunity to win the race, he's a racing driver. He's not going to say no. But right now, I would say, yeah, very much so. Happy just to let Tim Yarshall take the lead, to relax, because right now, he's not being slowed down by any means. He's still got the pace advantage over Tim Yarshall as well as Turkka Hakkinen. And meanwhile, they are pulling a very healthy gap ahead of Jonas Vanna. 2.5 seconds around a circuit like this, I wouldn't, shy away from in the slightest. I think that is a very healthy advantage and, again, gives them the options in terms of strategy. There's nothing stopping Turkka Hakkinen coming a lap early and be slightly offset from Tim Yarshall if he does want to go for a slightly less risky way of going for that track position.
Further back, we've got some battling here. Pejic and Gronewold, 19th position. It's an inside look from the Team Nitro of Tobias Gronewold, who will find his way past. BS Competition now line up behind him. Marco Pejic, Kaiki Oliveira must have had a terrible stop in all of that and sits behind. Although, actually, no, he was behind Marco Pejic earlier anyway. I'm trying to forget of where things were pre-pit stop. A bit of a weave there for Tobias Gronewold, basically saying, stop fighting me. Let's focus on what we can gain. Kunze, Vera, and Jonas Vanna from third position has found his way onto pit lane. So interestingly, one of the top contingent have found their way onto pit lane. There comes the burnout from Manuel Vera on his return to top split racing here in the DTM ESPORTS Championship. And we'll see where he comes out as Philip Dreiss will work his way past. Tobias Gronewold will be there as well. Wow, that was scary, Zach. That was terrifying. Comes out in the battle that we were just watching with Marco Pejic there as well.
Oh, that's very cutthroat, just darting across the circuit there. I don't know whether that was in an attempt to try and defend his track position or to get out of the way of people, but either way, that carried a ton of risk. Thankfully, didn't catch anyone out there, but the closing speed towards the opening corner, that had been flat out for just over a kilometre, I'd imagine, by that point. And yeah, I mean, very close risk. I'm not entirely sure if it was calculated by any means. Nonetheless, no harm, no foul, no contact. He is back out on circuit. Manuel Vera just in front of the two BS Plus competition drivers of Marco Pejic and Kaiki Oliveira. A bit further down in the field, but of course still awaiting a lot of pit stops before we really start to see as to where people are going to piece up. Jonas Vanna comes out just 4/10 clear of Maximilian Benneker as the two of them will lead those that have already come into the pit lane. Max Benneker, of course, trailing Vanna, and I'm sure isn't going to put up too much of a battle relative to him in the interest of when the rest of the top 10 make their way down pit lane as we tick closer towards the halfway part of the 60-minute race that we've got this evening.
Two cars have completed both mandatory stops. Mate Mikiewicz and Lucas Muller at the back. Patrick Chari and Julian Kunze, I believe, both have come in for their second stops as well of the afternoon. So at the moment, we're seeing it all unfold here in front of your eyes, ladies and gentlemen. We're seeing people that haven't stopped, people that had stopped, people that have stopped twice, as is the requirement here in DTM Esports. Into the pit lane, Alessandro Ottaviani for the Dirt Esports team, as he will drag his way down to the end of the lane. Tim Yarshall continues to lead, and Turkka Hakkinen behind. Philip Spiegel into the pit lane as well, as He'll also drag in Chaba Hagedis, who obviously had that incident a little bit earlier on that Lucas Muller was also caught up in. That was down at the opening corner. It was a light touch between the pair of them, but enough to slow Lucas Muller down and drop him to the rear of the train post his pit stop as Tim Yarshall and Turka Häkkinen remain at the front. I mean, Häkkinen is very, very close. I'm surprised if he will sit behind all the way to the end of this stint. I think he'll want to get ahead at some point, lift out there, importantly. He'll want to get ahead, potentially, before he comes into the pit lane, mostly because what would be in back of my mind here, Zach, if I was in Turka Häkkinen's boots, I don't want to come into the pit lane behind Tim Yarshall. If we both come in at the same lap, I want to be ahead of him, so that then I've got the space to the light and to the end of the pit lane. Like I've got the control there. Whereas if you're behind, you're kind of like almost bumping into the back of him. Or you can just push him over the pit lane, speed him, and give him a penalty. But don't talk about that.
It's interesting tactics. Definitely a way of doing it.
I've
Tactical
been
incident points.
before, don't worry about it.
Tactical incident points. I've always been one. If I've got a few banked and my opponent doesn't, a slight little bit of a tap, give him an incident point. Never goes amiss. But hopefully these guys are a little bit more decent than we are, I would hope. Tim Yarshall, though, comes into the pit lane. Turka Häkkinen staying out for another lap. So will be offset relative to Tim Yarshall. Now I think we're going to start to see him put the hammer down and start to use some of that pace we saw over the course of the first half of this race to potentially go for the overcut on the Audi.
See some battling close behind all that. I think it's Thomas Ribeiro and Moritz Lerner, who are very, very tight into the opening corner in the fight for a 10th position. Tim Yarshall then, from the race lead, has come into the pit lane. 4 drivers remain out on the circuit. Turka Häkkinen, Bo Dixon, Martin Peterman and Sebastian Ray. Tim Yarshall will be coming out surely ahead of Jonas Wanner, who is his teammate, so I'm sure we'll not get any major drama from Jonas Wanner behind. Wanner and Benneker are quite close, and Turka Häkkinen did exactly what you were kind of talking about, has seen Tim Yarshall come into the pit lane and thought, right, well, I'm going to come in the lap after, give myself that little lap of clear space. I'm not going to take any further risk as he brings his car down to the pit lane, and the Audi R8 of Tim Yarshall continues as the race leader, 2 and a bit seconds clear of Jonas Wanner.
Yeah, I think this is coming into a 2-horse race, though. The positioning that Yarshall and Häkkinen had over the rest of the field, even after the slightly offset pit stops relative to the 2 leaders, they've still come out relatively the same to Jonas Wanner and to Maximilian Benneker. So the gap that they pulled over the course of that first stint is going to be vital. Up onto the jacks, though, for Turka Häkkinen will drop down to P4. And now coming through the final corner is Tim Yarshall. So he's going to want to drop and get back going again. The gap will be very, very close. Who's going to be the one that leads towards turn 1, though, in this decisive moment for the lead?
Indeed. I don't know which way this is going to go. Here comes Turka Häkkinen off the pit lane. Obviously, Tim Yarshall will retake over. It's been a great pit sequence from Tim Yarshall, who actually leads by nearly a second after all of that. And obviously, here in GT3 racing, obviously there's no DRS. It's just the slipstream that they have to deal with, which is really prevalent within a second, not just a second for DRS. Although I do know that you've been on a chat recently with Drive Lounge, where one of the people that you were with suggested that DRS maybe should be in GT racing. Absolutely mental.
Isn't it? The argument was that the dirty air now in modern GT3s is too much, and that DRS would maybe try and offset some of that. I don't know. I didn't disagree for the sake of the fact that he was sat right next to me. But I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced on it. I'll be honest. I think it would maybe be an interesting concept
because I'm sat here next to you. All right, I see.
It's fine. You know, I know how to worm my way out of things. Don't you worry. But no, I mean, to be honest, yeah, fair enough. Dirty air a little bit. I think the slipstream and the pure form of DTM doesn't necessarily need DRS. And the full clip, by the way, the one you are referencing, I did bring that up and say that I think, does it not undermine the fact that GT3 racing is one of the purest forms of motorsport? Nonetheless, Bo Dixon makes his way down into pit lane, one of the last to do so. The only other 2 waiting for Martin Peterman and Sebastian Ray yet to come down pit lane. At the moment, looking very extravagant with what is 49 places gained between the pair of them. Of course, that is very quickly going to change when they do decide to come into the pit lane. What I am interested in now, though, is that the vast majority of the leaders have taken their first mandatory stop, is when the second comes in.
Yeah, which, again, as much as the pit window is open, that pit window being open is for Bo Dixon's chosen now, as as I say, he's robbed up and down, isn't he? The pit stop window is only for the first pit stop. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but just in case you're just joining us here in the DTM Esports Round 3 here at the Norisring, and of course, if you are, hello and welcome. It is Tim Yarsha who is currently our race leader after qualifying on pole position. Obviously, Martin Peterman and Sebastian Ray yet to come in for their first pit stop. 2 mandatory stops here in DTM Esports. First has to be in that middle portion of the race, and your second pit stop can be at any point after. So, as again, you can pit in the final 5 minutes if you really want to. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's the worst strategy in the world. If you're in clean air, might as well keep that clean air until the final 5 minutes. Tyre wear around here is not particularly high, as there's been contact there behind. As we look back from Martin Peterman, there is contact with some of the drivers that are sitting directly behind. I think it was Shaba Hagedis. He was into the back of Niels Dalsenberg, and Martin Peterman's just said, right, if you're all going to fight like that, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, very clever idea there, just to cut your losses and deal with it. Sebastian Ray continues on because he's still got a very healthy little bit of clear air that he wants to use. But yeah, clever there from Peterman just to sort of say, yeah, I'm all right actually, lads, cheers, straight into the pit lane. And that could have very much been a bigger disaster if things got ever so slightly wrong. And there's some of the carnage and chaos that we expect here at the Norisring. Ottaviani sits a second clear of this battle here, looking backwards from Thomas Ribeiro with Moritz Lerner, a previous champion, of course, of DTM Esports, in his rearview mirror. They'll both be promoted up a position and up into 8th and 9th now. Not anywhere near close enough for a move as the Mouse Esports BMW. But yeah, with 24 and a half, well, just under 25 minutes left to go in this race. Strategy, I think, again, I think with the clear air, especially if you're Tim Yarshall and Turkka Häkkinen, they're just going to do a rinse and repeat of the first stint. They're going to leave it as late as they possibly can, make the most of the clear air, come in as late as they possibly can to mitigate the risk of being caught up in traffic. And I think that's pretty much hitting the nail on the head in terms of the strategy. What happens in the fight for the podium, though, I think could be a little bit more interesting.
Well, Sebastian Ray just come into the pit lane. For a lot of these drivers, you're kind of wondering, right, what's the most that you can really gain from this? Because it's been so difficult to pass here this afternoon. Not necessarily like difficulty to pass, but like we've said before, it's difficult to make the pass and then get after the next lead without being fought yourself. Moritz Lerner sits behind Tomas Ribeiro. I mean, the best that Moritz Lerner is really going to get here, 6, 7, around there on the leaderboard. There's not really much chance of getting higher than that. You know I had to do it.
It's twice now.
Yeah,
twice
exactly.
now.
I'll drop another one in. How many rounds are this season? Is it 6, 7? Because obviously we've got 2 races on the final round.
This guy.
Don't worry,
big,
mate.
big 31, by the way. 31 years old. Grown man. Let's not forget. Lewis McGlade, you are...
Thank you.
You are excellent. You are the most amazing commentator that I have ever had the pleasure of knowing. Unfortunately, for what is it now, 6 or 7 years?
Nice. It is actually. I can't read out one of the messages that I've just received from the head engineer from BS Competition, but I don't think he's particularly pleased at what I've been saying on the broadcast. So we'll refocus on what we're doing and bring it back to the professional standard known here for the DTM Esports Championship. Tim Yarshall leads by nearly a second, by the way. He's been pulling out that margin.
Yeah, he's been looking very, very good indeed. Just over a second clear. I think he has realised that the threat of Turkka Häkkinen is, very real, and maybe is actually starting to use a bit more pace. Maybe a little bit of risk mitigation in the opening phase, driving at maybe 90% as opposed to full push, now realising that he does need to use that little bit of a margin in order to get away. Moritz Lerner comes in, though, for what will be his second stop. Same to Tim Roche, and joining the likes of Julian Kunze, Lucas Müller, Mate Mikovic, and Shaba Hagedis, all of whom have come in for their second stop as well. I think Moritz Lerner, in the thick of it in the mid-pack, deciding to come into the pit lane. However, all he's going to do is just come back out into the thick of it, just a different part of the racetrack and a different part of the field.
Indeed, but again, the search around this circuit is less so for track position at the moment, more so, well, it is for track position at the moment, just not in terms of actual positioning on the tower on the left-hand side. It's more about clean air is the most important bit, keeping in that clean air and not getting yourselves in too much trouble. But for Tim Yarshall, since the pit stop's been completed there, Zach. Seems like he's turned up the wick a little bit. 1.1 seconds the gap for the race lead. Closest battle in this top grouping is this one here for third position. Jonas Wanner and Max Benneker trying to get Mouse onto the podium. Benneker looks to the inside and goes full send, trying to get it alongside the M4 at the opening turn. A big look to the outside from Jonas Wanner. He'll have the inside as they head their way towards this double 90-degree section where they go to the right and then back to the left. Wanner with the inside line trying to hold the podium, and he will do for now. But Max Benneker, he is there and he's knocking at the door.
Beginning to realise I think this is a fight for third, and Maximilian Benneker wants to get himself onto the podium. It was a very half-hearted look to the inside, thankfully spotted by Jonas Wanner. I think read that to perfection, gave him just enough space to not, outbrake himself, but still gave himself the line that he needed to get the acceleration. Of course, Maximilian Benneker, I think Jonas Wanner darting into the pit lane, so Maximilian Benneker continues on. I think Jonas Wanner is going to say, well, look, Benneker, if you're going to battle me, I'm coming straight into the pit lane. Interesting that he's bailed out that early, though, but at the very least, Maximilian Benneker gets what he wants. Nicholas Hubin, though, as a result of the battling, within 0.7 of a second of Benneker as well. So this could still be a podium battle on our hands, just in the absence of Jonas Wanner, who's now offset in terms of pit strategy relative to the two that he was fighting.
I'm not going to lie, that angle really threw me off. From my experience of commentating on certain championships where reliability might not be of the highest level, I thought it was a car pulling over for retirement. But thankfully, no, he was just coming into the pit lane, so it's absolutely fine. Tim Yarshall leads by a second out through the final turn. 20 minutes left to go. Yarshall from Hakkinen, from Benneker, from Hauben, Ottaviani, Ribeiro, Haase, Wisniewski, Gronewold and Drace. You can see all those drivers at the bottom of the tower on the left. They have all made their second stop, led at the moment by Jonas Wanner, and you can see quite a bit in the distance there in the background. Here comes I think Thomas Ribeiro, who will sneak his way through on Jonas Wanner, as obviously not for position but for track position, for clean air. It's quite a way back until we get to Moritz Lerner and the Maus team that sits in 21st position, the driver who's second of those that have stopped twice. Manuel Vera is into the pit lane, had a podium in the opening round of the championship at the Zandvoort circuit, where he was runner-up to Alessandro Ottaviani. Max Benneker did join on the podium that day. At the moment finds himself back in a podium position ahead of Nicholas Hauben.
Yeah, Benneker, I think, is in a very strong position here. We doubted him maybe for a second in terms of his initial early stop, but I think it is actually reeling itself back in terms of maybe being slightly more favourable for the Maus Esports driver, who sits currently P5 in the overall standings, a third and a 15th to his name. Again, just consistency. Well, I guess consistency is what Benneker usually is. The P15 may be a little bit of an anomaly. That P3 doing a lot of heavy lifting, and he'll be looking to return to the podium. It was very crucial, of course, that we saw Wanner get in front of Thomas Ribeiro for that track position. Again, a reminder, they do not have to relinquish for blue flags if it is someone that they were either ahead of before the pit stop phase or someone they were fighting before the pit stop phase. So, of course, to get that measure over Thomas Ribeiro, who we have seen has been very aggressive over the first half of this race, quite important there for Jonas Wanner's chances, as he is about 3.5 seconds clear of Moritz Lerner. Thomas Ribeiro, meanwhile, comes in for his second stop as well. Another one comes in, ticks off the mandatory requirement, and will be full push for the final 18 minutes and 19 seconds of this race. Lerner, though, with that early stop, like I say, he is very much caught up in a little bit of traffic here. Crucially, though, will he get in front of Thomas Ribeiro towards the opening corner? He's going to give it a good go. Look to the inside of the Mercedes. Ribeiro going to try and fight it to the outside. Bit discouraged as Lerner muscles his way past.
Yeah, they've tapped the back. That's Florian Haase, who's currently sat in 6th position that they're fighting with. Florian Haase has just been cost that spot. Moritz Lerner will come through on his old teammate and now finds himself short, 19th position, sure ahead of Thomas Ribeiro. But Florian Haase will be fuming in all of that he's lost a little bit of time. This is back to Max Benneker with Nicholas Hauben. Benneker's going to work his way onto pit lane, and so he'll drop his way down the order. Hauben will go up to 3rd position. The curiosity then is to where is Max Benneker and Alessandro Ottaviani, who follows his way into pit lane. Where are they going to come out comparatively to Jonas Wanner? At the moment, he sits in 16th position. Dries and Filippo both in pit lane as well. Not the day they were aiming for, that's for sure.
No, not in the slightest. They've tried to mitigate some of the damage, but I think the race circumstance just hasn't gone their way in the slightest. Beneker and Ottaviani keep an eagle eye on them, just trying to see as to where the rest of the pack are going to be. So keep an eye on the likes of P16 and 17. They're now making their way through and out of the double 90-degree right-hander. So keep an eye on this. It's going to be a race against time with the black and yellow BMW, the Alpha 1 by SX of Jonas Vanner. And that really is going to be a turning point in Beneker's chances for the podium. If Vanner can get through and establish some control in this, he could be looking very pretty to take P3. I imagine we're going to see Beneker and Ottaviani crawling their way out of pit lane. There's going to be a huge speed differential. Vanner might be able to clear him by the time they reach turn number 1.
Oh, there we go. There goes around the outside Max Beneker, just seeing the BMW get ahead of him, of Jonas Vanner. Straight around the outside. Wasn't even a problem for him, and the gap separated by half a second on the exit of pit lane. This is the fight for third position by the time everyone comes into the pit lane. Just to keep you updated with that, Jonas Vanner at the moment, the holder of the final position on the podium, could potentially go its way of Nicholas Halbert if he's able to piece together the laps at the moment. He does have the fastest lap of the race, at least, does Halbert, who sits in that third spot. It's obviously Audi from BMW from Porsche at the moment, 1, 2 and 3, and the patient wait for the final pit stops for the top 9. They were all late. Don't panic about the fact that it says pit window closes. For those that remain out on the track, they've already completed the one mandatory stop that has to go in that pit window sequence. For the second stop, it can be after the pit window closes, because the pit window has, in fact, not closed. Just sort of.
Yes. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, nice. Yeah, so they've all stopped, so no one is at risk of basically the pit window closing countdown is largely inconsequential. They can take their second stop whenever they feel like it. Inconsequential, really? Anyway.
Well, I mean, it's big. It's got a few letters, isn't it?
That's true. Well, that one out in Scrabble, and you'll be getting a good few points. Actually, no, it's got quite a few vowels, so maybe it's not worth many points. I don't know. Regardless, Nicholas Halbert, 2.8 seconds off the back of Turkka Hakkinen. I will say, very impressed with Tim Marshall over this phase to really pull out the gap on Turkka Hakkinen, who, to be honest, I thought was a comfortable favourite over Tim Marshall. He's put that one to bed and definitely showcased that he's got the pace relative, of course, to the Finn from needracing.com. I mean, now it's reached a little bit of a stalemate between the pair of them. It's hovering around 1.5 seconds. Marshall certainly cannot get complacent, but I think he has demonstrated to Turkka Hakkinen that, slow your roll a little bit, mate. I have got a bit of pace in my pocket and still will be gunning for this race win.
Yeah, not many can put out a gap like Tim Marshall is at the moment on the field. 1.5 seconds that gap has grown to, and even to Nicholas Halbert, obviously that gap's kind of growing between 3 and 4 seconds. Obviously that's just nature of where they are on the circuit and what they're doing, whether they're going through the hairpin or through on a straight through the chicane. Depends on where they are and what they're doing as to where the gap kind of ebbs and flows. Just the nature of how racing is, isn't it? But Tim Marshall is doing a brilliant job, having a 1.5 second lead at the moment over Turkka Hakkinen, who's not quite had the pace. I mean, look, he would happily take second spot. After Turkka Hakkinen started the season, the pre-season round where he was victorious, he came into the season with such high hopes, finished 5th and 10th as there comes a look to the inside. Thomas Ribeiro making the move on Moritz Lerner. And by the time they complete the hairpin at the opening corner, it is Tomas Ribeiro ahead of Moritz Lerner. So he has managed to find his way through. Julian Kunze sits behind for needracing.com in the Porsche behind. Very good move. Very clean move there from two of the more experienced drivers on this field.
Yeah, they know how to calculate the risk. They know not to do anything silly. And Thomas Ribeiro saw a gap, put his car there, and I think Moritz Lerner understood there wasn't too much benefit in battling him at this stage. The lone Mercedes in the pack, though, for the Portuguese driver of Thomas Ribeiro, who has been unbelievably quick, like I mentioned earlier, in the Racing Ranked events over the course of the back end of 2025 and into 2026. Interestingly, in the Ferrari, and actually, to be fair to him, quite a mixture of cars, we've seen Thomas Ribeiro be very, very quick, I think highlighting his skill as a driver. Tobias Grunewald on the back end of Florian Haase towards the opening corner. The BMW will look to the inside. Little bit of a twitch under braking as they negotiate through the kink. The Audi goes nice and wide, allows the German through, and that's Team Nitro back into the top 15. Again, not necessarily where these two drivers will want to be fighting for at the moment, but still plenty of race and plenty of second pit stops to reshuffle the order with just under 13 minutes left of this one remaining.
Yeah, I believe it is the top 8 at the moment that are yet to do their final stop. So Jarschel, Hakkinen, Halben, then Wisniewski, Oliveira, Spiegel, Dautzenberg and Peterman, the last drivers that are required to come down onto the pit lane for the second time. It means it's been a great race so far from Jonas Wanner, who started this one in 8th and is in very strong podium contention with 12 minutes and 25 seconds left to go. Back to Lukas Müller, the reigning champion of the DTM Esports Championship. It is Falcon Sim Racing trying to battle their way past BS Competitions. Marko Pejic, very close into the opening corner. Could have had a look. Decided to back out of it. Goes a little bit deep on the brakes and nearly clatters into the rear end of the BMW M4 that sits ahead of him. But he is remaining very, very close. This fight at the moment for 19th position.
Yeah, Pejic and Müller. I mean, Pejic, not necessarily his target sim as such, or his target title is racing. He's more inclined elsewhere in sim racing. And don't get me wrong, he is very adaptable. But for Lukas Müller, racing is where he spends a lot of his time and invests a lot of his energy. It's his breeding ground. It's his sort of home sim, if you like, and one that he has established himself very highly in. To be down in P20, it's going to be a bit of a knock, I think, to the German, who has won a huge amount of accolades in the world of sim racing, and as we've mentioned, of course, the reigning DTM Esports champion. Did very well in his GT4 test, by the way, at the Red Bull Ring. I'm sure was very grateful to do that, and I'm sure would definitely like to go for another one, but at the moment down in P20, he's going to need a bit of a bounce back for the final 2 rounds of the season when we head to, of course, Oschersleben and the Sachsenring at the back end of this one. P20, I'm sure, just going to be a little bit of a hiccup for Lukas Müller. Marko Pejic, though, directly in front of him. Still opportunity in this race, but I have to say, the fight for the lead, I'm not going to say becoming more and more certain, because it never, ever is. But Tim Jarschel, I think, is making a stronger and stronger claim for it as the laps tick on. That gap to Turka Hakkinen now teetering on the edge of 2 seconds.
We'll know where things fully stand post-final pit stop, but you can see how much risk's being taken. To be fair, the top 2, even out of there, they're not taking it all the way out to the barrier. They're pretty comfortable, well within themselves, and not taking any major risks. And, I mean, you mentioned there about the final 2 circuits, at least of this online season, before we head to our season finale. In person, Nuremberg and Hockenheimring will be great fun. It's just kind of a reminder of the very different circuits that we take to in DTM Esports, and of course copying parts of the DTM calendar, but obviously not in a completely different order, but just at different timings. We're not doing it on each weekend that DTM goes racing, but to have them race on circuits like obviously Red Bull Ring didn't technically count for points, but which is a shame because I love the Red Bull Ring. But obviously having Zandvoort, having the Norisring, having here at the Norisring, and then of course Oschersleben and the Sachsenring, very different circuits, all 5 of them. And by the time we go to our 2 effectively Grand Prix circuits to end the season at LAN, they're all very different feeling circuits. They don't, it's not like racing on a Grand Prix circuits left, right, and centre where they all kind of look and feel different, sure, but different, but also same, if you know what I mean.
100%. I think Zandvoort is probably the only one of the online season that has that kind of dynamic, but even then it very much has got the same feel as an Oschersleben or a Sachsenring, because fair enough, it is wide in places and is a proper racing circuit, don't get me wrong, as they all are, but it is still tight and technical and twisty, and track position is a big thing. I think at the Nuremberg Ring, overtaking maybe could be a little bit more on the difficult side. Hockenheim, though, with the slipstream on that run through the Parabolica and towards the hairpin at T6, we are going to see a very different dynamic in terms of the racing. I think it will shake things up when we get to LAN. First of all, you've got the LAN environment, which some of these drivers will be used to, others maybe not. There's a lot more on the line as well, so the stakes rise, the pressure rises, composure becomes a lot more of a deciding factor. And then ultimately as well, you've not got necessarily the case of nail a lap in qualifying and you're one of the favourites for the win. It's a case of, okay, you've nailed a lap in qualifying, now you've got 5 other drivers within a tenth of you who are all in the slipstream and jostling positions left, right and centre. Into the pit lane though for his final stop, and for both of them actually, our 2 leaders, Tim Jarschel and Turka Hakkinen, in with 8 minutes left to go.
Nikodem Wisniewski then will hit the front of the field. Someone who knows how to get race victories and stuff, but it's definitely not going to happen today. He and Kaiki Oliveira, of course, 2 drivers who were teammates in the recent past before Nikodem Wisniewski moved on for the BS competition stable. Martin Peterman will remain out on the circuit. Jonas Wanner, let's see what the gap's going to be. Wanner, Benneker, those 2 remain quite close in what is the fight for effectively 3rd position, already rolling towards the end of pit lane. comes 4th and 5th place, at least on the road for now. Tim Yarshall and Turkka Häkkinen. Look at the speed. Look at Jonas Vanna. He's not that far behind Turkka Häkkinen, it must be said. But fortunately for the Dur Esports outfit, the Dur Esports stable and the Falcon Sim Racing team, Tim Yarshall is going to have a 2-second lead over Turkka Häkkinen. He has to see out for the next 7.5 minutes. And I'm not going to lie, Zach, he's not the kind of driver to make a mistake from this scenario.
No, but he's not immune to it. I mean, as much as I'm going to try and force a narrative that the race win is still open, and yeah, objectively it is. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the dynamic of Tim Yarshall and how good of a driver he is, it is very unlikely that he is going to drop it. Still, though, who knows what can happen. But for Turkka Häkkinen, though, I mean, you can't take anything away from him apart from the race win. A P2 is going to be a very nice lifeline to his championship, really get him out of that bottom half of the championship. Currently sat P14, like I say, with a healthy number of penalty points to his name. He's not been involved in anything over the course of the first 53 minutes of this race. As long as he can keep it clean for the next 6.5 minutes, he should be okay, and that's a healthy points gap going into the final 2 rounds of the online qualifiers.
Yeah, like I say, this is important at this point in the championship to be having that gap into the championship, where if something does go wrong over the next 2, you're still very, very, very likely to be in the top 20 of the points, which is what these drivers are trying to do, so they can get themselves in contention for our season finale in the middle of August. Only a month to wait until we'll be crowning our champion for the DTM eSports for the 5th season. Obviously joining the ranks of Moritz Lerner, of Kevin Siggy, of Tim Yarshall, of Lucas Müller, is Turkka Häkkinen and Jonas Vanna doing battle. It is a look to the outside, sorry, it's Max Benneker rather, looking to the outside of Jonas Vanna, and he couldn't quite get it done there at the opening corner, but Benneker is looking for a second podium of the 2026 season. He's tried this one before, looking to the outside here. This time he's trying to leave it alongside. There is going to be a bit of a brush between the two of them. Jonas Vanna is going to go out into the barrier and slams the barrier on the exit of the chicane. They've dragged Nicholas Howland back into it for Team Nitro as well. It's going to be a trio following from what will be the final step on the podium. More slides, 3 wide into the final corner. 5 minutes and 30 seconds left to go. Max Benneker's going to steal it away, and now the up and under is going to go, at least at the moment, in the way of Jonas Vanna in the Alfa SX car.
Yeah, side by side as they round the final corner. Here comes the slipstream, though. Look at how strong it is for the Porsche, tucked up behind Maximilian Benneker, who naturally moves over to the left-hand side to defend the opening corner. The Porsche will go late on the brakes to the outside. Jonas Vanna going to try and use Benneker as a battering ram, forcing the initiative wide there, side by side between the Porsche and the BMW, as Benneker has played this to perfection. He's forced the two behind him to battle, so he's free to build a bit of a margin down the inside for Nicholas Howland.
Yeah, Max Benneker may not be that experienced here on the Racing platform, but there is one thing that he is experienced with: racing, and he knows what he's doing in it. That was actually timed, but like you said, to perfection there with that move. Definitely not done yet, and Nicholas Haupt and Jonas Vanna will definitely be hounding the back of Benneker's car. We're still awaiting the top 3 to come into the pit lane. Wisniewski, Oliveira and Peterman all waiting to come in the final 5 minutes of this session. Tim Yarshall will return to being your race leader. Turkka Häkkinen in second position, and this fight for third. Further back, we ride on board with Alessandro Ottaviani, opening race winner of the 2026 season. He's now got the trio ahead of him, and that fight for the podium.
Indeed so. Ottaviani maybe could still worm his way into this. We saw a very uncharacteristically poor start, I will say, from Ottaviani. A fantastic qualifying from the Italian, and one that we often do see from him. Interesting that he's dropped back so much, but like I say, the battling in front could well allow him to close back into this, and I'm sure he's going to be rude on by the fact that these guys are motivated as ever to be fighting for the podium. Being at the back of a 4-car train at a circle like the Norisring, though, doesn't necessarily fill me with a lot of confidence, but I'm sure Ottaviani is confident in his own ability to go forwards. Back in the slipstream, Jonas Vanna on the rear end of Nicholas Hauben, but won't be anywhere near close enough for a move to the inside of turn number 1. I think Vanna is going to have to wait for the move to be, caused and catalysed by Hauben making a move on the inside of Benneker, who, as we've established, isn't going to back down from that podium lightly.
No, I mean, look, they're all working hard. 60 minutes of racing around the Norris Ring's not easy at the best of times. When you get a result ahead of you, which you really, really, really want to hold on to, you're going to give it absolutely everything you can. 3 minutes left to go. So from where Tim Yarshall is on the circuit, as he crosses the line pretty much now to start what I think will be the 4th to last lap. There is a word for it. Can you remember what it is?
Pre-anti-penultimate.
Thank you. Goodness me,
there you go.
well.
You have
a horrible word, isn't it?
That's awful, but I love using it. Yes. Penultimate, second to last, anti-penultimate, pre-anti-penultimate. Nonetheless, Maximilian Benneker on the pre-anti-penultimate lap, having to defend for what could well be a net podium. Lovely switchback, though, from the Porsche of Nicholas Halben.
Yeah, this is great fighting as we are on the 67th lap of racing here at the Norisring. It's Max Benneker holding the inside line. It's a big look to the outside coming in from Nicholas Halben. He is going to steal away third position for now. I know it says fourth. We're still awaiting Martin Peterman to come into the pit lane. There's still Jonas Wanner's back into it as well. Benneker's on the outside, might get hung out to dry here. Could it be 3 wide to the final corner for the second time in this battle? Finally finding his way through comes Nicholas Halben, but Jonas Wanner was there as well. Surely we're going to get some 3 wide across the start finish straight. Look at this battling.
I love to see it. I mean, the Norisring, it's tight and it's technical, but goodness me, it is a breeding ground for some good racing. Jonas Wanner with Maximilian Benneker trying to use him as the battering ram now. It's roles reversed from a couple of laps ago. The black and yellow BMW of Wanner will establish control. Bumped wide, though, the Porsche sideways into the side of Maximilian Benneker, who will find his way through. Well held there from the Porsche of Halben, and arriving on the scene is Alessandro Ottaviani.
And he went way deep at T1. I thought he was going to be firing his way straight off the road. To be honest, he was in that hot. But that tells you how hard Alessandro Ottaviani is pushing here. He can smell an opportunity ahead of him as Martin Peterman comes round to complete another lap as the race leader, still awaiting his final pit stop. He leads by 8 seconds. But, of course, Tim Yarshall will be our race leader who's just come across the line. It will actually be the penultimate lap. They've just started now with the lap times they've got. Yarshall has the fastest lap of the race, focusing on this battle here from Wanner on back. It's Benneker, it's Halben behind. Benneker was looking to the outside of the opening corner, and Halben is the one committing to it. The 4 of these remain extremely close in Wanner, Benneker, Halben and Ottaviani. Tomas Ribeiro's not that far behind because of the ruthless fighting they've been doing. It's been allowing the contingent behind to close their way onto the spoiler, potentially of Alessandro Ottaviani, for the last couple of laps of this race.
Yeah, and heading on to the final lap of the race, I believe Martin Peterman needs to come in on this lap. He does, and as such, Tim Yarshall will lead them on to the final tour of the Norisring. Of course, right now it's Jonas Wanner that leads the fight for the podium. Benneker, Halben, Ottaviani, Ribeiro maybe could be an outside shot if things go disastrously wrong for those in front. But with one more tour of the Norisring to go, it all comes down potentially on that run in towards T1.
69 laps down, 1 left to go. We're on lap 70 in the last tour of the Norisring circuit. And for Tim Yarshall, who holds firm at the front, he's not going to have a pretty difficult run towards the checker flag. This is where the difficulty is going to come. The fight for third. Wanner, Benneker, Halben, Ottaviani. Extremely tight between them. A look to the outside again comes in from Benneker. He's surely going to have a look into the final corner as, unfortunately, we're probably going to cut away from it to see Tim Yarshall across the line and give him his plaudits because he's been absolutely fantastic this afternoon, leading by 1.5 seconds, but this is where the fight really is on. Third position, look to the inside from Max Benneker, can't quite do it. Tim Yarshall's off the final corner, and he's going to win here at the Norisring. A fantastic performance to become the 3rd different winner of the 2026 season. Turka Hakkinen in 2nd, and the drag race to the line will see Jonas Wanner just about able to beat Max Benneker, Nicholas Halben and Alessandro Ottaviani. The quartet across the line in a frantic and fantastic fight for 3rd place.
Oh, what a battle that was. Goodness me, that was as close to the limit as you can get, and around a circuit like this as well. Just incredible. Tim Yarshall take a bow as well. Really, really doing a fantastic job all the way through that race. The 2 PS Plus competition cars will bring it home 15th and 16th. But yeah, after what was 70 laps of racing in the end, Tim Yarshall brings it home. 2.4 seconds clear of the fin of Turka Hakkinen.
Indeed. Tim Yarshall then, our race winner for the Falcon Sim Racing team. Turka Hakkinen and Jonas Wanner in 2nd and 3rd behind, with Max Benneker a superb drive to 4th position. Nicholas Halben, Alessandro Ottaviani, Tomas Ribeiro, Moritz Lerner, Kunze and Gronewold will round out the top 10 of the 3rd round of the DTM ESPORTS Championship. And Zach, looking at some of these gaps, they are incredibly close, and it's exactly what we expected around it. It was close in qualifying, close in the race as well.
To be honest, I'm not surprised really, but in a sense, kind of actually am. In how big of an impact the pit strategy had over the course of that race, and how we saw quite a few different approaches taken throughout that race for it all to sort of coagulate right at the end of that one was really nice to see. And ultimately as well, these drivers didn't allow the pressure to get to him and to get too argy-bargy in the fight for 3rd. Jonas Wanner, though, I'm sure will be looking maybe fairly similar to Checo after that race.
Well, look, Sergio Perez finishing in third place. Obviously, great to see. Obviously, it was Jonas Manner. And obviously, great to see the top three there. We will be catching an interview, at least with, hopefully, with Turka Hakkinen and Jonas Manner. Tim Yarshall, if you speak German and you fancy hearing from him, hopefully we might even get Tim Yarshall here in the comms booth. Tim, can you hear us? Tim Yarshall, have we got a read? Can you hear us in the comms booth? I'm not sure Tim's getting us at the moment. Zach, we'll try one final time. Tim Yarshall, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So that's a good sign.
Nice.
Great race there, Tim. Absolutely dominated, defended well from those behind, and dealt with the tricky strategy here of the Norisring brilliantly. What do you make of your race?
Yeah, it was a good race. Droga was fast, and I was happy. And I was happy that the German stream wants me.
Yeah, well, we'll let you have a breather. We'll let you. You can go speak to the German stream. We'll be back to you in a moment. Don't worry.
Okay. Nice.
Okay, we'll try and grab Turka Hakkinen then instead, and we'll see what you have to say. A great drive, of course, to second place there, Turka, and obviously you put on quite the performance. What do you make of that one? Couldn't quite catch down our race leader at the end.
Ich bin einem Zoom beigetreten. Ich weiß jetzt nicht.
Oh, I think we'll come back to the interviews in a second, Zach.
Potentially so. We'll line out a couple of creases there. Would be really good to hear from Tim Yarshall, Turka Hakkinen, and of course Jonas Vanner off the back of that very intense battle. The main thing I'm interested in is sort of their ideas on the pit strategy and whether what was executed was what was planned in the end of that one. I'm curious as to see whether or not people stuck to their game plan or whether a lot of it was reactionary, because we saw Turka Hakkinen come in the exact lap after Tim Yarshall for both his first stop, and he came in on the exact same lap for his second stop as well. So I am interested as to how much of that was premeditated.
Yeah, obviously we'll try and grab the interviews after the Germans have interviewed who they need to interview. But look, refocusing on the race ahead, obviously it came down to the pit stops we were saying there through the race. But the most important part, as we were expecting coming into the evening, Zach, it was qualifying, wasn't it? That qualifying session which saw Tim Yarshall grab the pole position, that was really the decisive factor of the day. The only one who really made any major progress was Jonas Wanner with that fantastic drive to third.
Yeah, to be fair to Turka Hakkinen, I believe he was also up a net 2 positions as well from his starting position. It's not a huge amount of hard charging progress, but it is something. On the caveat to that, though, look at Ottaviani. I don't think nailed the pit strategy, and crucially, actually, not even pit strategy, didn't nail the start. He started, of course, the outside front row of the grid, dropped back in the early phases, and that initial drop back nailed qualifying, didn't get the first couple of laps that he'd have wanted, and I think that did actually cast a shadow over the rest of his race and caused him to struggle just a little bit.
Well, hopefully we'll grab Turka Hakkinen here, who's in the comedy booth. Turka, a great drive to second. Talk us through it from your point of view.
Yeah, thanks. And first of all, thanks for my team for pushing me quite hard this week. And I had a good turn one. It was quite well practiced, as you can see. And then I figured if I'm behind the quickest driver in the series, I might just well hang behind him, because, the best way to lose a race at that point is to start fighting, which is completely pointless. So I was just chilling behind him. He made a couple of mistakes, but I didn't feel like attacking because I saw the guys behind were a bit off pace compared to him. So yeah, was a good drive. I wish I hadn't made that mistake before my first in-lap, but it is what it is. P2 is all right, I guess.
And also, talking of the strategy, Turka, we were having a little bit of a discussion. How much of it was game plan? How much of it was you reacting to the race itself? Because Tim came in the lap before you did. You came in the lap straight after him. And then the second pit stop, you both came in on the same lap. How much of an idea did you have about the strategy before the race? And how much of it were you just sort of playing by ear and seeing how the race developed?
Well, I think we had realistically 4 different race plans. One of them was completely crossed out in the middle of the race. But it was most important to just never box into traffic. And as you saw, the only car I ever saw this race was Tim. So, yeah, not bad.
You, very quickly before we let you go, you won, of course, the pre-show round here in the DTM eSports. I was at the Red Bull Ring. Coming into the season with a high level of confidence. Has this season gone the way you wanted? Obviously, you've had 2 top 10s from the opening couple of races, and now with a podium and challenging for a victory. Is this kind of how you expect the season to go, or were you maybe thinking there might have been a bit more on the table in the opening couple?
Realistically, I don't know if there's much more on the table if you consider like the preseason as well. Like we've been quite high up there consistently. I can't lie, I can't be disappointed in that. I think it's actually been a great effort, and especially if you look at the previous season and the season before that when I actually failed to qualify for the series, I think the trajectory is okay, you know?
Well, Turka, thank you so much for joining us here in the comms booth. Great drive and a great challenge. You put on quite the show there. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go, Zach. Obviously, great to hear from Turka Hakkinen there. And I will say, I've commentated on Turka for quite a while. I've known Turka for a long time. He used to race for Dennis Lynn's eSports team and stuff. He was a quality drive back then. Obviously years ago. I get the feeling that Turka's really built on his driving, on his experience again and again and again. And he's definitely a top-tier driver. Speaking of top-tier drivers, Zach, here we go. Jonas Ranner.
Yeah, Jonas, talk to us about those last couple of laps. I'm sure quite stressful, going against the likes of Max Benneker through the final few laps. But all in all, a very, very strong 60 minutes of racing for you, but ultimately one that came down, I think, to the final 5 or 8 minutes of the race, dealing with that battle. Just talk us through your mindset for that one around a circuit as challenging, I guess, as the Norisring as well.
Well, I'm glad I can be here after that last couple of 5 laps or something. The race was pretty chill, I would say. I mean, I had a pretty good start going around the outside, gaining 4 positions. From then on, I played a bit with Otta. I mean, he let me go, which is good when you have teammates in front. I mean, the first stop, I just waited till everybody just pitted behind me, so I have a clean air to get into. And from that point on, I think until the last 10 minutes, it was pretty straightforward. And I mean, the last 10 laps were probably the hardest I've had so far. I mean, I'm sweating, and I think only from the last 10 laps only. So I'm pretty happy I can be here. I don't know, like 5 laps till the end, I thought I wouldn't be here at all. So.
You say it was pretty chill, obviously, earlier on in the race. We were kind of seeing that in the commentary booth. There was a lot of drivers that were kind of following each other around and not battling too hard, obviously, to try and keep that track position around the pit stops. How hard is it to go mentally from it being calm to it being chaotic, and you're not fighting with just one other person and maybe trying to overtake them? You're trying to defend from 2 or even 3 other guys, battling those and trying to hold the podium from them. It seems like it's quite a switch that you have to do at this level of esports, which I'm sure a lot of people sat at home and wonder how that's possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's mentally pretty hard to do Norisring at all. I mean, especially in a 60-minute race, doing like 72 laps or something we did now. And then having the last 10 laps to go all out. I mean, it's basically just after Niklas did his last stop. I mean, we all were in pretty close, and I knew that Max and Niklas had better tires, so it definitely wasn't easy. I started making some mistakes, which probably could have avoided being in a 3-way fight. But I mean, it's super hard. I mean, it's not even going from practice into quali. I think that's even easier, especially like that's what I felt now. But I can't really describe it how you change your mentally, like going from just driving, doing continuous laps, then going to a 3-way fight, basically having to defend every corner you're on the track. So yeah, it's pretty hard to describe for me.
And talking of, I guess, Norisring, you mentioned it as a very, interesting circuit in of its own right. We've got 2 more races of the online qualifiers, then of course the Nuremberg and the Hockenheim for the main event. Oschersleben and Sachsenring up next. How do you expect the race dynamic to maybe change and shift for those final 2 rounds? Is there anything you're going to do differently in terms of your approach going into them? Particularly because now, I'm not going to say you're guaranteed to go through, but with 8th, 9th and a P3, you're looking very, very strong to make your way into the top 20 by the end of these 5 rounds. I guess, how does your mentality maybe kind of shift going into the final 2 rounds of the online, and then potentially even beyond, going into the LAN environment for the actual championship later on this year?
I think now my mentality just switches just a bit. I mean, the approach probably will be the same. I mean, I will probably start focusing a bit onto the LAN final, at least getting some laps in on the tracks. But I mean, yeah, I mean, now with the P3, I probably wouldn't have defended if it was the last round of the championship. So yeah, like, it's not going easier there, but you probably see if somebody's coming from behind and you're like in, I don't know, P8, 9, 10, you probably just say, okay, I mean, I'm pretty safe. I don't want to risk anything. And yeah, I mean, the approach still will be the same, so I don't get out of the rhythm, which is pretty, yeah, easy to do. So yeah, but I probably will start focusing a bit onto the LAN event as well, just looking into the distance.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and huge congratulations on P3, by the way. I'm sure you are feeling the heat after that one. Get that fan in the background pointed straight at your face. Go and cool off for a little bit, and we'll see you back for the next round of the DTM Esports Online qualifiers.
Thanks a lot, guys.
I think for Jonas Werner, the only 180 he'll be hitting today will be on the dartboard behind him. Thankfully, not on the track. No 180s for him, no spins, just a great drive to third place. And of course, it's been a superb performance from him. A couple of top 10s to start out the season, and now to grab a podium, moving from one strength to another, which is easier said than done in a championship like the SAC, where sometimes getting into that rhythm can be difficult. Someone who's been in the rhythm so much. We are joined by him again. It's Tim Yarshall. He's back in the comedy booth. Tim, another victory for you. You had, what was it, 5 last year, I think it was again. Finally taking your first one here this season. Different format, 60 minutes of racing and the strategy to go with it. Seemed like everything went perfectly for you today. Is that how it kind of felt?
Yeah, it was a perfect day, I would say. I hit it a good quali lap and started from pole. Yeah, and survived the first corner. I got the hit on the left, but I don't know what happened. So yeah, I focused on the first laps and made no mistakes. Yeah, and Torka Häkkinen was fast too, and was in the slipstream the complete the whole first stint. And yeah, after my first stop, I had 1 second. I was happy about that, but then I made a mistake in the last corner and lost 3 or 4 tenths again. Yeah, that was bad, but the pace after this was pretty good. I hit it lap after lap. Very consistent, and yes, and then the gain to Torka was bigger and bigger, and yeah, I could bring it home.
Talk to us a little bit more about that second stint, because for the best part of the first one, I think in the commentary box and maybe for you in the cockpit as well, it was the case that we thought Turka was going to be a huge threat for the rest of the race. You said about, you know, a slight little bit of a mistake and then the pace picking up. Was it maybe you getting a little bit quicker? Were you maybe a bit kinder on your tyres? Was it just a nice rhythm? Or do you think Turka maybe dropped off towards the end of the race and that allowed you to make the difference?
Yeah, it was a great rhythm. As I said, very consistent, lap after lap. And yeah, I found it the good rhythm. And yes, that was the key, I would say, in the end.
Obviously, from our experience, one final question for you. I'm sure we'll be talking to you quite a bit later on this season. It's a LAN final. The top 20 in the championship will be in person. How are you thinking that's going to go? How are you feeling about that? Because obviously you are one of the contenders that we expect not only to obviously be there, but to be contending at the front for the title as you have done in years past.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. A LAN final after a couple of years after Corona, and yes, yeah, it will be interesting. I think it's good for me because I can. Yeah, I can really good adapt me to other rigs, and yeah, so I'm looking forward to, and yeah, now the last 2 races, the two last quali races, and then in the mid of August Nuremberg. I'm looking forward to it.
Tim, thank you so much for coming back to the interview as well. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for your time. And congratulations on another fantastic victory. We'll see you in a week at Oschersleben.
Have a nice evening. Thanks.
There we go. Tim Yarshall, our race winner. Great to hear from him. Obviously, Zach, we love hearing from our top three of their own experiences, especially because everyone's very positive after what has been a fantastic race. Reflecting on that before we'll let everyone go and get themselves ready for Oschersleben. Great race here at the Norisring. Maybe a little bit calmer and less frantic than we were expecting.
First of all, I'm sure these guys are fed up of seeing our faces, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it was an incredible race, and for once, sim racers on their best behaviour. We did see a little bit of a tussle, but for the most part, it was kept clean. I mean, that battle for the podium is going to be one that we're going to hark back to, I'm sure, for the rest of the season. And looking forward to see how the final 2 rounds of the online qualifiers decide the grid for the the LAN finals at the Nuremberg Ring later on this year. I mean, DTM Esports once again delivering in its brilliance.
Yeah, of course. The build-up and the race to see who's going to be in the top 20 of the championship will continue in just a week's time. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been myself, Lewis McGlade, Zach Sweeney, the commentary booth. Obviously, big thanks to Racestream, to DTM Esports, and to our broadcast partners in Traction. It's been a fantastic race, and Tim Yarshall has been our winner. We'll see you in a week's time when we go racing at Oschersleben. Until then, bye-bye.